Are political agreements possible between Israel and Palestine at all? 30 years ago in 1993, the then Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin and the leader of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, Yasser Arafat, sealed a handshake memorandum that entered history as the Oslo Agreement. For this step towards peace, Yitzhak Rabin was later assassinated by a radical Israeli. The current escalation began on the 50th anniversary of the Day of Judgment war. Alexei Golovka discusses the history of the region's unsuccessful path to peace. The president of Turkey is not the first to remind the world that there should be two states in the land of Palestine. Over a year ago at the UN General Assembly, he spoke about it with visual aid in his hands. I'm very curious, where does the land of Israel actually begin and end? Numerous UN Security Council resolutions condemning Tel Aviv are ignored. If so, then why do we need decisions from the global organization? The history of the return of Jews to Palestine after World War II began with such tense and hard manual labor. This ancient land was under British rule at the time. With the increasing number of immigrants, Arab-Jewish conflicts flared up more and more often. The Crown's soldiers suppressed them, but soon London admitted that finding a compromise between the peoples was impossible. There were two proposals: to create a twofold Arab-Jewish state in Palestine, or to divide Palestine. The Soviet Union initially advocated the creation of a twofold democratic state. In 1947, the UN decided that two states, Arab and Jewish, should be formed in the lands of Palestine, with Jerusalem and Bethlehem as shared religious centers. The dissenting Arab majority rejected the unfair division and were supported by 8 Islamic states. Thus, the first war in Israel began, known as the Victory War for Independence. Among the Palestinians, it is considered a catastrophe. Defeat resulted in the loss of land and hundreds of thousands of refugees. Palestinians never hang a chandelier or a ceiling light. They always have a light bulb. Whoever they are, Yasser Arafat or a poor person, I ask why. Because we are temporary here. We are refugees. Since then, the map of Palestine has changed only in one direction. Under British rule, Jewish settlements were only small enclaves, but in the Arab world, the UN Plan of 1947 gave 56% of the land to the Jewish state. After the 1967 war, the Arabs were left only with the Gaza Strip and the territory along the western bank of the Jordan River. 20 years after the First War in 1967, the Arab world was forced to take up arms again. The Six-Day War broke out. It took less than a week for the Israeli army to defeat the superior forces of the Arab coalition. The paratroopers, including Moshe Dayan, posed at the Wailing Wall. Israel eventually occupied the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, Jerusalem, the Sinai Peninsula, and the Golan Heights. It was then that the UN adopted a resolution on the borders of Israel and Palestine, which is recognized today by most countries, including Russia. According to this resolution, the Arabs were left with a narrow strip along the sea, the Gaza Strip, the territory along the western bank of the Jordan River, and also East Jerusalem. It is based on this determination that Moscow is proposing to resolve the conflict. An organization for the liberation of Palestine appeared on the occupied territories. Arabs were deprived not only of land, but also of the opportunity to pray. Respected sheikhs used to pray on the street in front of the mosque, but soldiers came and even banned them from praying on the street. That's when the Day of Judgment war erupted. The attack on Israel began almost on the same day as the current Hamas incursion, October 6th of 1973, and it was also a Saturday. Initially, the armies of Egypt and Syria achieved some results, but after 3 days, Israel mobilized again and the Arab countries were defeated once more. The front stopped 100 kilometers from Cairo and 40 kilometers from Damascus. According to recollections, even General Secretary Brezhnev couldn't handle it. The Soviet Union traditionally supported Arab states. We offered them a reasonable path for many years. No, they wanted to go to war. We provided them with state-of-the-art equipment. Vietnam didn't even have such equipment. They had a double advantage in tanks and aviation, triple advantage in artillery, and absolute superiority in air defense. And what happened? They were defeated again. It was during this time that the term shuttle diplomacy emerged. U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger shuttled between Arab capitals and Tel Aviv, trying to force the parties to sign a peace agreement. Formally, Washington was an ally of the Jewish state. But even the Admiral Zumwalt at the time remembered the diplomat's tricks. He simply didn't want Israel to achieve a decisive victory. He wanted Israel to shed enough blood to soften the consequences of post-war diplomacy that he was planning. In other words, the White House, through Kissinger, deliberately stoked the flames of that war to convince both Arabs and Jews that peace in the region could only be achieved under the control of the United States. This approach persists today. The current US Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, is heading to the region. However, he does not plan to talk with Arab leaders. All US administrations, even the recent ones, claimed that one of the main goals of US foreign policy is the security of Israel. However, no agreements that have been signed in the past brought peace to this land. Uprisings were followed by uprisings. Palestinians have had 3 intifadas. In the Gaza Strip, the liberation movement radicalized and Hamas came to power. For both peoples, Palestine is the land of their ancestors, and how to resolve this over the past 80 years has not been devised by even the most experienced politicians.